Classic Historical Tales presents A Tiger's Promise Episode 1. Sky Brothers over Kunming. The sun beat down hard over Kunming's dusty airfield in the summer of 1941, but Lieutenant Thomas "Tommy" Kane hardly noticed the heat anymore. A former crop duster from Arizona turned American volunteer group, AVG pilot, he had come to China not for glory but for purpose. What he found instead was a war and a friend. Captain Li Wei was the son of a Kuomintang officer, a lean young man with fierce eyes and a quiet disposition. He had flown clunky Curtiss Hawks before the Flying Tigers arrived, barely surviving engagements against Japan's superior Mitsubishi Zeros. When the AVG began training ROC pilots in Chiang Kai-shek's China, Li Wei was among the first selected. Tommy Kane wasn't much older than Lee, but he carried the kind of swagger that came from flying low over Midwestern cornfields and getting shot at over Burma. His first impression of Lee was that the kid was all nerves and no instinct. But that changed the first time they flew together. The P-40 Warhawk was not the fastest or quickest plane. Tommy was there in China to help train and develop the ROC pilots. "You're tight on the stick," Tommy had said after a training sortie. "But your head's in the game. That's what wins dogfights." Lee didn't say much, but he showed up early every morning, ready to learn. Tommy taught him everything: how to use the sun as a weapon, how to bait a Zero into a climb, how to fire in short, surgical bursts. "Zeke's got better turning, but he can't take a punch," Tommy would grin. "You hit him once, make it count." Their bond was sealed on a mission over the Salween River Gorge, patrolling near the Burma Road. A Japanese bomber group with fighter escort attempted to strafe a supply convoy. Tommy and Lee were scrambled out of Kunming. "Stay on my wing," Tommy barked through the radio as they climbed into the clouds. "Whatever happens, don't chase solo." They tore into the formation like a two-man blade. Lee's first kill came that day, a Nakajima Ki 43 Oscar spiraling down in smoke. Later at base, Tommy slapped his shoulder and handed him a shot of contraband bourbon. "You got teeth, kid." By the autumn of 1941, they were known throughout the AVG's 2nd Squadron as the Sky Brothers. Chinese mechanics painted the moniker on their P-40s in characters beneath the Flying Tiger's snarling mouth. They flew together over Rangoon, Lashio, and over the skies of Hengyang. They were never more than a few hundred yards apart in the air. But war has a habit of demanding sacrifice. On December 12, 1941, just days after Pearl Harbor, the Japanese launched a brutal attack on the airfields around Kunming. A squadron of Zeros swept in from the east, targeting fuel depots and grounded aircraft. Tommy and Lee scrambled before their boots were fully laced. The sky became chaos. Tracers arced across the clouds like angry comets. Tommy's P-40 dove hard into a pair of Zeros, diving on a wounded ROC pilot, peeling one off with his guns blazing. Lee screamed into his radio, "Tommy, break! You have 3 on your 6. But Tommy didn't break. He saw Lee in the corner of his eye, chasing a Zero too close to the deck. Another enemy fighter slipped in behind Lee unnoticed. Tommy rolled his plane sharply and dove, placing himself between Lee and the pursuing enemy. His machine guns lit up. The Zero exploded in a flash, but not before the others behind Tommy stitched his fuselage with fire. Smoke filled the cockpit. Flames licked up from his engine. "Get clear, Lee." Tommy's voice crackled through the radio, calm despite the doom. "Get out of here, brother." The Warhawk spiraled down in a tail of smoke, disappearing into the jungles below. There was no parachute. Lee circled once, long enough to see the wreckage bloom in the forest canopy. Then, with tears he could not explain, he returned to base. He flew every mission after that, with a red stripe painted down the nose of his P-40, a tribute to Tommy's Arizona roots. He kept a worn copy of an old photograph in his flight suit, the two of them smiling beside their planes, arms draped like brothers. In 1945, after the war ended, Li Wei continued flying for the ROC. By 1949, after the war against the communists ended, he fled like many Chinese to Taiwan to peacefully live out the remainder of his life. He got married, had children, and lived a full life in Taipei City. Before he died in 1983, he left a small wooden box on the mantel of his living room. He told his family to preserve the box and its contents. Inside it was a pair of American aviator goggles, cracked and scorched from battle. Li had carved into the wooden box, "To the man who gave me wings, my brother in the sky." What Li could never have known was 30 years after his death, a young man would be looking for these goggles and would not stop until he found them. Stay tuned for episode 2 of A Tiger's Promise.